Rockets streaked across the skies of northern Israel, leaving behind trails of fire and fear as sirens pierced the morning air in towns and villages close to the Lebanese border. Daily life once again gave way to urgency. Families rushed towards shelters, streets emptied within seconds. The sound of interceptions, loud, sharp bursts in the sky, signaled attempts to stop incoming fire before it could reach populated areas. Yet even as explosions echoed across the region, another reality was unfolding thousands of miles away in Washington, where officials sat across negotiating tables speaking of progress, stability, and the possibility of peace. This stark contrast defined the moment. On one side, the raw immediacy of conflict, rockets, injuries, and constant threat. On the other, the controlled language of diplomacy, measured statements, cautious optimism, and long-term visions. Both realities existed simultaneously, shaping a situation that remains deeply uncertain. The latest escalation began with a series of rocket launches from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. According to Israeli military sources, dozens of projectiles were fired over the course of hours, targeting areas including the Galilee region. Some were intercepted by Israel's air defense systems, while others landed in open terrain. The pattern has become familiar over months of conflict, an exchange that rarely pauses long enough to allow for meaningful calm. Emergency services quickly responded to the aftermath. In one incident, a 61-year-old man was injured by shrapnel, sustaining relatively light wounds but serving as a reminder of the ever-present danger. Medical teams treated him at the scene, while authorities confirmed that no additional casualties were reported in that specific barrage. Still, the psychological impact of such attacks, repeated, unpredictable, and relentless, continues to weigh heavily on civilians. These events unfolded against the backdrop of a much larger and more complex conflict involving Hezbollah and Israel, a confrontation that has intensified as part of a broader regional struggle linked to Iran. Hezbollah, widely regarded as an Iran-backed group, has played a central role in the cross-border escalation, launching attacks in support of wider regional dynamics that extend beyond Lebanon and Israel alone. Yet even as rockets continued to fly, an unexpected development was taking place in the United States. For the first time in decades, representatives from Israel and Lebanon engaged in direct talks. The meeting, held in Washington and facilitated by Marco Rubio, marked a rare moment of diplomatic engagement between two nations that have technically remained in a state of war for generations. The significance of the meeting cannot be overstated. Direct contact between Israel and Lebanon at such a level has been absent for more than 30 years. Previous interactions were indirect, often mediated through third parties. This time, however, officials from both sides sat in the same room, exchanging views openly, a development many observers described as historic. The discussions lasted over 2 hours and were described by participants as constructive. There was talk of long-term visions, of clearly defined borders, and of a future where interaction between the two countries could occur, not through conflict, but through normal, peaceful means. We talked about a number of things, and most importantly, the vision, the long-term vision, where there will be a clearly delineated border between our countries. The statement reflected a rare moment of forward-looking thinking, an attempt to imagine a reality far removed from the current cycle of violence. Yet beneath the optimism lay deep divisions. Lebanon's position entering the talks focused heavily on immediate concerns. Its representatives emphasized the need for a ceasefire, the return of displaced civilians, and urgent humanitarian relief. The country has been deeply affected by the conflict, with large segments of its population uprooted and infrastructure severely damaged. Israel, however, approached the talks with a different priority. Its leadership has consistently framed the conflict not simply as a border dispute, but as a broader security challenge centered on Hezbollah's presence in southern Lebanon. We made it very clear that the security of our civilians is not up for negotiation. This line underscored Israel's position that any lasting solution must go beyond temporary ceasefires. For Israeli officials, the objective is clear: dismantle Hezbollah's military capabilities, reduce its influence, and ensure that northern Israeli communities are no longer under threat. That stance has been reinforced repeatedly by Benjamin Netanyahu and other senior figures within the Israeli government, who argue that long-term peace cannot be achieved while Hezbollah remains armed and active near the border. On the Lebanese side, the situation is further complicated by internal divisions. Hezbollah is not just a militant group, it is also a significant political force within Lebanon. Its leadership has strongly opposed the Washington talks, rejecting the very idea of negotiations with Israel. We refuse negotiations with the Israeli entity. These negotiations are futile. The statement delivered publicly by Hezbollah's leadership highlighted a critical challenge facing Lebanese authorities. While the government may seek diplomatic engagement, it does not fully control all actors within its territory. Hezbollah's independent military operations, including rocket launches, continue regardless of government policy, creating a fragmented and complex national stance. This internal divide has also sparked tensions within Lebanon itself. Protests have emerged in some areas, with critics accusing the government of yielding to international pressure. Others, however, see diplomacy as the only viable path forward, given the country's ongoing economic crisis and the devastating impact of continued conflict. Meanwhile, the United States finds itself navigating a delicate balance.
On one hand, it remains a strong ally of Israel, supporting its security concerns and military objectives. On the other, it seeks to stabilize Lebanon and prevent further regional escalation. This is a historic opportunity. The phrase used during the Washington meeting captured the cautious optimism of U.S. officials. Yet it also came with an acknowledgement of reality that progress would not come quickly.
This is a process, not an event. That perspective reflects an understanding that decades of hostility cannot be resolved in a single meeting. The issues at hand, territorial disputes, security concerns, political divisions, and regional alliances are deeply entrenched. The broader regional context adds yet another layer of complexity. The conflict between Israel and Hezbollah is closely linked to tensions involving Iran. Hezbollah's role as an Iran-aligned force means that developments on the Israel-Lebanon front are often influenced by dynamics far beyond the immediate border. At the same time, parallel diplomatic efforts involving Iran continue, further intertwining the various strands of Middle Eastern geopolitics. Any agreement between Israel and Lebanon could have ripple effects across the region, potentially influencing negotiations involving Tehran and other actors. Back on the ground, however, these high-level considerations offer little immediate relief. The reality for civilians remains unchanged. In northern Israel, communities continue to face rocket fire and the constant threat of escalation. In southern Lebanon, airstrikes and military operations have left towns damaged and populations displaced. Israeli officials have made clear that military operations will continue until their objectives are achieved. We will not rest until we restore their security. The statement reflects a broader public sentiment within Israel, where there is strong support for continued action against Hezbollah. Surveys and public opinion data indicate that many Israelis prioritize long-term security over short-term ceasefires, even in the face of international pressure. In Lebanon, the mood is more complex. While there is widespread frustration over the conflict and its impact, there is also deep division over how to respond. Hezbollah's supporters view its actions as part of a broader resistance effort, while critics argue that its operations are dragging the country into a war it cannot afford. Amid all this, the Washington talks represent both hope and uncertainty. They offer a rare channel for dialogue, a chance, however slim, to shift the trajectory away from continuous escalation. Yet the gap between the two sides remains significant. Lebanon seeks immediate relief and a halt to hostilities. Israel seeks structural changes that would fundamentally alter the balance of power along its northern border. Bridging that gap will require not only negotiation, but also compromises that neither side appears ready to make in the short term. For now, the region remains suspended between two paths. One leads toward further escalation, more rockets, more airstrikes, more displacement. The other toward gradual engagement, slow, difficult, and uncertain, but potentially transformative. Both paths are unfolding simultaneously. In the skies above northern Israel, rockets continue to arc across the horizon. On the ground in Lebanon, the effects of war continue to spread. And in distant conference rooms, diplomats continue to talk, searching for a way forward. The outcome of this moment is not yet clear. What is certain, however, is that the decisions made in the coming weeks, both on the battlefield and at the negotiating table, will shape the future of the region for years to come.